I have about 101 things to do today, but the topic that I want to speak about, which is ultimately how do we navigate times of crisis or crises in business, is something that is just taking up about 80% of my headspace. And so that's why I'm recording this episode right now. It's completely unplanned and unscripted, but we're going with it because it is here. It obviously wants to be expressed. So that's what I'm doing. I'm letting it express itself, this whole idea and thought process that I'm having. Now, at the time of recording, this is set against the backdrop of the genocide that we're witnessing in Gaza. And while I feel very strongly about that, and I have been slowly, quietly starting to speak out about it on social media, I wanted to make this episode somewhat timeless, purely because I don't think this is the last time that we're going to go through something like this, where there is something awful, terrible to witness happening in the world. And we as business owners are also in a situation where we want to still try and show up and sell and, look after ourselves in that sense and keep our business going because it is our primary source of income. And we find ourselves in somewhat of an apparent dilemma about how to navigate it. So that's why I am keeping it a little bit more generalized, just so that it hopefully has more life to it, more longevity, and more helpfulness in that sense. Now, if this is the first time you're consuming any of my content, I'm Becky Lopak. My business work is focused around helping people express themselves, helping them make sense of the thoughts in their head, and ultimately communicate those with the world so that they can find their people, so that they can actually create the kind of world that they want to see. Now, when I say communicate, I also want to just be clear that that is not necessarily always verbal. It's verbally, non-verbally, through the actions they take, through the offers they create. It's really about how we show up in the world and the way that we conduct ourselves. So that's the angle that I'm almost taking today when I want to talk about this. This is the expertise that I want to bring to the table in context of navigating these situations. And the reason I want to do that is because from my own observations, we experience these situations which are, again, just absolutely awful. And I do believe, and I hope there are many people like me that watch them and go, oh my God, this is so wrong. And yet a vast majority of us don't speak up, don't use our platforms. We sit in a state of relative silence, a state of not knowing what to do. And so I wanted to maybe offer some invitations to think about this and how we can respond in maybe a slightly different way than you've maybe considered before. Now, I'm not here to give any right answers. I always say there is no singular right way to do any one thing. There is only ever the right way for you. I am also not here to tell you whether the way that you do that is right or wrong. This isn't about casting any personal judgment. My work and this episode, like I said, is purely here as an invitation for you to maybe consider ways that you can show up and ways that you can respond to situations that are just shocking in a way that is different to how you've done it before. Because obviously the way that we are all choosing to respond to these scenarios isn't really working right now, because just if you look around and see what's going on, yeah, it's time for change. And that's what I want this episode to really invite you to consider. Now, just for a bit of personal context, I also don't want you to think, listening to this episode, that I am some high and mighty being that knows exactly what she's doing and knows exactly how she is choosing to navigate it, because that's not the case. It was only about a week ago that I even plucked up the courage to comment on the situation and to say I don't agree with it. So I'm very much, I believe, in the same position as you potentially are, of feeling that friction between maybe our past actions and almost worried that if we show up now and start talking about it when we haven't before, what does that say about us? So I come from this very much, I believe, in the same position as you. And what I should actually do here is just define specifically who I'm speaking to in this episode. And that is people who run a business and who show up online as a personal brand, essentially. They show up as the face of that business, as the human running it. And maybe you share snippets from your life. Maybe you share certain things that are going on outside the context of business. And it's also specifically for the people that feel the moral crunch of it right now. So if you're listening to this and trying to almost determine a way to show up because you want it to reflect well on your business, to be honest, this isn't for you. I'm here to speak to you as the individual who runs the business. And my intent is that this episode gives you something so that you can start acting in more integrity with yourself and your beliefs, even if it doesn't reflect well on your business in the greatest light, even if it doesn't strategically position you to be viewed favorably by as many people as possible. This isn't about how we can create a perception that we are some do-gooder or that we are XYZ so that people get off our backs. This is about how we as the human can find our way to navigate this situation whilst also being aware of the fact that we do run businesses. So if that's you, stick around. If you are listening purely because you're trying to control the narrative around your business and use it for tactical gain, please stop listening, because I'm not interested in helping you do that. I'm interested in what can we do that is for the benefit of the majority of people on this planet, not what is the benefit for you and your profits. So yeah, just a little line in the sand there. Now I'm going to give away the big takeaway really right now. And that is that I think when these situations happen, one of the main problems that we can personally encounter is that we feel like we don't know enough about what to do. We don't know enough about a situation. We're not clued up enough, or we ultimately, in whatever sense, as we exist right now, are not enough in some way to show up and to speak out or to take action in XYZ direction. There is a sense of not enoughness. And that is what I ultimately want you to drop listening to this. Because I believe however you are right now is exactly enough to take action. And this, if you have listened to my content before, you'll know this is the same thing that I preach all the freaking time. But it applies here too. For you to show up and take intentional action, which is powerful and can contribute towards creating a better world for all, you have what you need. The key thing here, I believe, is that instead of thinking, okay, if I want to contribute to this, I now suddenly need to become some sort of activist. I need to become an expert on the political situation. I need to spend a week unlearning everything I already know in case I accidentally show up with certain bias. I think that's just fundamentally not true. I think the key to change is that we all embrace exactly who we are, exactly what the skills that we already have at our disposal, and use that to show up and serve. So what I mean by this is, say you are a coach that helps people with perfectionism. Right now, I can guarantee that this concept of perfectionism is one of the things that is preventing people from speaking out and making their voice heard, because they are worried about imperfectly expressing themselves. They are worried about getting it wrong. So you as a coach can still show up even if you don't really understand the situation. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go educate yourself there, but even if you don't understand the situation, how can you maybe show up and help people navigate that stickiness of perfectionism to then express themselves? Say you are somebody who, and actually I'm going to go with a completely different scenario right now. Say you are somebody who actually, and I'm thinking of one of my dear friends who is an interior designer. And so I can see from her perspective, actually showing up and starting to speak about these things might be like, well, I never talk about anything other than interiors, really. That's the main thing that people come to my account for. But what I would say, again, this isn't me telling her what to do at all, but just giving you avenues for reflection. She is the biggest cheerleader I know of other businesses. She is so good at showing up and supporting other individuals anytime they show up and post content. She could be using those same skills right now, and I'm no doubt she is. I'm not saying whether she is or isn't. She could be using those skills to show up and cheerlead the people that are speaking out. So it's not about you having to do anything drastically different. It's about, I believe, really looking at what can you do that naturally comes to you, that you are skilled in, that feels in alignment, and using that for the greater good in this scenario. So for me, I'm showing up and speaking out. I like doing videos. I feel very comfortable expressing myself. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the exact same thing, except now I'm doing it in the context of how can we actually embrace this for the greater good? How can I use my voice that I know how to use? I know how to maybe say things in ways that inspire people, that maybe alight new ways of thinking. How can I apply that to this situation right now? And it's really interesting because as I'm expressing this, I can almost preemptively hear people thinking like, well, my business is nothing to do with, helping people overcome perfectionism, or it's about nothing that's associated whatsoever to navigating times of crisis. But I fundamentally believe that every single human, especially if you're running a business, has a skill that they can bring to the table that is of use right now. So even if that is speaking out to your communities, even if that is actually just sharing other people's messages, even if that is simply educating yourself on what's going on and finding ways that you can contribute to change. The key thing here really, I think, is a willingness to do so, a willingness to say, okay, if I accept myself as completely enough in this moment, and that what I do know and what I do feel is enough, what are the things that I could be doing? That's it. That's the question to ask yourself. And it doesn't have to be connected to business. It might be super connected to your business. And actually, I want to touch on that in a second, a little bit deeper. But ultimately, like I said, I'm not here to give you the answer. I want to just give you that question. So if you are somebody, and I follow a lot of people in the more spiritual community, I follow a lot of people that tend to be in the role of healer in some way, tend to be in the business of helping individuals. In that scenario, I think there is so much that we can do. So even if you are somebody that offers meditations out to people, can you record a free meditation for helping people calm their nervous systems right now so that they can remain resourced and know how to act? If you are a yoga teacher, can you maybe record a specific yoga practice, again, with the intention of helping people look after themselves in this moment? Because we know that when people are well-resourced, when we are emotionally regulated, that's when we are more able to show up for other people. So how can you maybe work in that way? So even if it is not directly contributing to the situation that you are experiencing or the situation that you want to help facilitate change happen. So for example, right now, how can we help work towards a ceasefire? You might actually be perfectly placed to help resource and support the individuals that go and do the work, that go and actually go on the marches, that do all of the more direct things. Your role in this may be to support those individuals. Now, the whole kind of nuance here is one of internal congruence. And what I mean by that is that it's really keeping an eye on your emotions and how you emotionally respond to certain things. Because as I am speaking, you might hear in your head a little voice that says something like, oh, okay, actually, if I'm just saying I'm not going to do anything about that situation, but just help the people that are actively working to do it, some of you might feel a sense of relief, like, yes, actually, that feels really, really right for me. Some of you might feel a sense of relief of almost, oh my God, I'm off the hook. Okay, if I do that, maybe that's enough. Maybe that puts me in a position where I can continuously stay in ignorance. I can continuously avoid confronting those really sticky feelings. So there is a sense of personal nuance here that you have to be aware of, that the actions that you do choose to take, or that maybe feel like, oh, I could probably do this, just analyzing whether that is true alignment, which, to be honest, in your body will feel like, yes, this feels correct for me. Or if it feels like, yes, actually, that feels like something I could do to avoid doing that other thing that I really don't want to do. Because I think sometimes that avoidance can come from fear. And really, I think often if that fear is there, and I speak from personal experience, and actually let me just take this example really, really specific and personal to me. I know if I were to just go and be like, I'm just going to help other people and I'm not going to directly speak out on it, and not going to use my platform to actually maybe inspire others and specifically get into the details of it. I know for me that's avoidance, because there's a part of me that believes passionately that I should be speaking out, that really truly believes that I should be one of the voices joining the chorus calling for a ceasefire. I should be educating myself. And within me, I know that's a truth. And so if I was to just be like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that because I know I can just help the other people, I personally will be able to feel the dissonance and be like, I know that's an excuse for me. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. All I'm really saying is that we do need to have that capacity to interrogate that internal voice, to really honor our emotions and what is right and wrong for us in this scenario. So just to kind of summarize that bit that I've spoken about, really the question is asking, if I accepted that what I knew and who I am is enough right now, what is the actions that I could take to actually contribute towards positive change? Is it speaking out? Is it creating resources to help actually the people that are taking the action regulate their nervous system? Is it just supporting my friends quietly behind the scenes to navigate this? Is it activating my community? Whatever that is, there is so much that we can be doing if we allow ourselves to actually think about it, to go there, to explore what that might be. And again, I kind of offer all this up knowing that when I've been on social media and looking at comments and seeing people respond and comment on a post that is atrocious, something that they're witnessing, and just going, oh my God, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? That is the question that I'm seeing everywhere. And or really what we're doing is, a lot of us, we're trying to look outside ourselves for somebody else to tell us what to do, instead of taking personal responsibility for finding that answer ourselves. And it's no surprise, really, if you think about it, because we've grown up in educational systems that have continuously told us exactly what to do to be successful, to fit in, to be part of the collective. We grew up being told that there are right ways to act, right ways to be in society. And so it is a completely normal response in this situation where you feel out of your comfort zone to try and turn to somebody else, some figure of authority, and just say, tell me what to do, please, tell me what to do, because it's what we have been doing. And actually, I think that's why we've ended up in the situations that we're in, because those people, if you think about the governments, again, just to speak specifically about the Gaza situation, the UK abstained from the vote about whether to call for a ceasefire, and the United States was the one that vetoed it, and all the other countries were for it. Again, I'm probably not articulated that very well, but in that situation, our authority that is telling us what to do right now is not in alignment necessarily with actually what you want to happen. So we have to become more resourced. We have to become more willing to search for the answers ourselves, especially in situations where we feel out of our depth. So that's that bit. The other thing I just really want to talk about, and again, I say this from the perspective of working with all my clients in the past, and when I speak to them about using their stories to connect with their audience, so using their experiences and sharing that so that other people can then kind of connect with them. And one of the things that comes up fairly often is a worry that what they are doing is essentially commoditizing their experience. They're using their vulnerability, their whatever, to make their business look good. And I think this same kind of quandary of, is it unethical for me to use my experiences to get people to buy from me, can also actually apply with slight nuance in this situation, where I think a lot of people probably worry that if they go out and start saying, hey, I've created this resource, I've created this yoga practice, for example, that is specifically designed to help like you regulate your emotional well-being or your nervous system or whatever. This practice is dedicated just to that. It might be perceived that they are taking advantage of a crisis to promote their own business. And again, I can say this having had these thoughts and feelings myself. So that's why I really wanted to acknowledge it here, because I want to remove as many barriers as possible, or give you as many ways of thinking and almost moving through these inner resistances, because I want you ultimately to be taking action. And really, the way to navigate this question of, is it unethical for me to actually be specifically creating things that are centered around this crisis, or what, again, with whatever's going on right now, the first point of call, as with anything, is checking in with yourself. Are you only doing this so that you look good? Are you only doing this because you're seeing it as an opportunity to forward your business, like to promote your business? Is that actually part of your reason for doing it? And like I said at the very beginning of the episode, if the only reason that you're going to take action is so that you can benefit, then I'm actually not that interested in you continuing to listen to me or be in my space, because I personally believe that running a business isn't just about lining your pockets. It isn't just about your personal profit. I see business as a way to actually create change in cultures, in the world. And I think there's so much power that we have. Often we don't realize it, but I really, truly believe that. And so if you are like, yeah, to be honest, I'm just looking for a way to benefit from it. Actually, I couldn't give a monkeys about what's happening right now. It doesn't emotionally affect me in any way. Then again, please stop listening now and unfollow me. But if you do kind of ask that question, go, no, hold on, I do really actually care about what's going on. I really do want to help. I really do want to do something. Then again, it's questioning, is that concern that you have about like, oh God, does this just look like I'm trying to benefit my business? Then really you're just obsessing more about what other people think of you versus actually how can your actions help the world become a better place. So that is a bit of an ego thing to navigate, right? That is for you to sit down and actively work on that side of yourself that is really scared about actually showing up and doing something that you know you could. And actually a great exercise here is to consider, if you were to post this thing or to take the action or whatever it is, and you knew that everybody would see your intention clearly, that you would not be misunderstood, would you do it? And if the answer is yeah, absolutely I would, then I think that gives you a little bit of a clue about maybe the area that you do have to work on. And the idea here as well isn't that you then go, okay, cool, I'll go work on that and then I'll do it. The idea here is that you go, okay, I will, in this moment, put myself in a place of feeling courageous, and I will post the thing, I will take the action, I will do it, and also be aware that I consciously need to work on that ego piece that is so terrified of what other people will think of me, and go there. Because I can guarantee if it's stopping you showing up and speaking and taking action about situations that are so incredibly awful, then for sure it's going to be showing up in other areas of your life as well. And now an actual tip, I suppose, or something like that, if you are really worried about it, you can totally explain yourself. You can totally acknowledge that fear publicly or in whatever scenario. So I could say to you, right, look, I'm creating this video right now because it's on my heart and I'm really passionate about more people speaking up. I am also, there's part of me that is worried that other people might see this and think I'm only doing it because I want to raise my profile in this situation. And honestly, like, that's not the case. And I strongly know that's not the case, which is why, to be honest, I don't have too much resistance against taking this action and putting this episode out there. But I can still acknowledge it. If I was really worried, but I knew my intentions were pure, I can actually post it and say, hey guys, I'm putting this out there. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be perceived the wrong way, like I'm trying to elevate my profile and do whatever. But I assure you it's not. The reason I'm doing it is because I deeply, truly care about this. It's because I actually really want to feel like I'm doing something. And right now, this is what I have to bring to the world. So I hope it's received in good faith. You can say that. You can be honest. I think so often we're worried that we need to come across as 100% perfect and put together, that we somehow don't think that we can actually be like, hey, by the way, I'm doing this. This is how I feel, but I hope you receive it okay. We can totally do that. We're humans, right? And actually, for me, that's authenticity. That's truth. Another thing you can do here as well is, if you are putting something out there, taking action, doing whatever, is looking at how you can reduce that inner narrative that is telling you that you're doing it for personal gain by the way that you actually go and execute on it. So I know for me, when I first posted about my thoughts around the Gaza situation, actually on Instagram, I disabled the comments because I didn't want it to feel like I was trying to seek sympathy or I wanted any validation on it. I put it out there as like, I'm putting this out here, but actually I'm putting it out here because I think this needs to be said, but I'm also not actually open in making this conversation about me. I'm also not looking for people to comment on this and say like, oh, that's so good of you, Becky. Like, because I know if that happened, that would feel bad for me, because I'm like, don't stop looking at me. Don't look for how you can engage with me in this conversation. I want you to see this, use this, and go and do something else. So again, things like, if you're going to post about it, you totally can turn off the comments. If you're going to create workshops or do things like that, you can do them free. You can do things that actually actively reduce that sense of, oh, I'm just doing this for my ego. And that, my friends, is pretty much all I have to say right now on this topic, is really just looking at, if you accepted yourself as enough, exactly as you are in this moment, what could you do? And I don't know if I mentioned it then, but that first thing might actually be just educating yourself. It might be actually just choosing to witness what is going on. Because again, this is what I first talked about when I first posted. The reason I didn't actually take in anything about what was going on in Gaza was because I was worried I didn't have the emotional capacity to take it on. It was because I was worried that if I did look, it meant I wouldn't be able to go on as normal, because suddenly I'd be aware of actually what was happening. And that fear then stopped me from looking, because ultimately it really came down to, I mean, I highly recommend you just go check out, if you're kind of like, oh God, yeah, I know I'm still at the stage where I actively can't even look at what's going on, then I have written about my own personal experience of this. I'm not trying to self-promote here. Oh, Jesus. See how it can come up? But ultimately, if you accepted that you have enough emotional capacity that however you choose to respond, if you do look, is enough, what would you be doing? Right? And if you are already looking, you are already aware and trying to figure out what you can do. If you did accept that right now, exactly all the skills, everything that you have, the way that you are in the world, or the way you operate, that is enough, what would you be doing? So I just wanted to chuck all that kind of question there for you to consider. And then once you start to consider taking action, start to consider doing something, if you start to feel these fears bubbling up within you, this resistance to doing so, is just sitting with those and looking at them and accepting that you can still have those fears and take action. Those fears are simply pointing out areas that you probably need to examine simultaneously whilst you take action. So yeah, because again, we kind of loops back around to that thing. However you are, you with those fears, you with all those worries, you're still enough to take action, whatever that looks like for you. So I hope that's been helpful in some way in helping you maybe just think differently about this question and maybe move past just some of those initial freeze state responses, because that's definitely how I operate. I definitely go into a state of panic, freeze, and not knowing what to do, and then flight, which is the complete, like, I'm just not going to look away. I'm just not going to look at this. I'm going to avoid this at all costs because I don't know how to respond to it. So yeah, I just wanted to offer this up to you guys in case it's helpful, because I believe that if we want a great change, if we want situations like this to stop happening, then we need to change the way that we respond to them, because we have witnessed very clearly right now that what we are doing isn't working. Oh wait, one last point. Remember, you're also not alone in this. So while you do have a personal responsibility to look at what you can do, it doesn't mean that you need to suddenly try and find out all of the answers, all of the information on your own. You can seek out accounts that are actually finding their purpose in collecting that information and educating people. You can work together. It isn't a case of like, oh God, but if I'm just looking for somebody else to tell me what to think, does that mean that I'm not taking responsibility? We can work as a collective. And again, that's something we must do, because if we are all individually operating as little islands that have a responsibility to fix the whole thing, it's just not going to work. It's not going to happen. We have to figure out how to organize as a collective to create change, because it's our collective action and our collective voices that are going to make the difference. So yeah, while I'm saying like take personal responsibility for what you do, doesn't mean you have to isolate yourself and do everything. You can also seek others that are maybe taking different actions and seek ways to collaborate with them, to partner with them, to learn from them, to resource each other as well. So just the final thing there as well is that yes, you have personal responsibility, but we are also in this together, and change is going to happen when we act and move together. So sending you courage to take whatever action you need to take, sending you courage to accept yourself as enough in this moment and to move from there.